Well, hey guys and gals, love in the time of Corona. Now that is the title of a new book by Dr. Diana Wiley. Now the subtitle is Advice from a Sex Therapist for Couples in Quarantine. How timely is that? I'm Andy Asher. I'm editor over here at bloomerboomer.com. Perfect timing, as I say, for a new book release. Dr. Diana Wiley says that she encourages couples to, make the most of this extended period of what she calls, in quotes, forced togetherness, to rekindle the sparks of passion and discover deeper levels of intimacy. So, we will talk with Diana Wiley in just a moment, but first, though if you are new here, Boomer TV is in its fourth season now of our CNN-style interview format, like what you'll see right here. Now, if you want to be part of this amazing journey with Bloomer Boomer and our community here, go ahead and like us on your favorite social media, where we live stream on Facebook and also over at YouTube and Twitter and Twitch. That's for gamers. I'm kind of a gamer, so that's why I'm there. Instagram, and of course on the Bloomer Boomer website. So in a moment, we are going to talk to Diana Wiley and her book, Love in the Time of Corona. And in the meantime, don't forget, I love marmalade. Well, Dr. Diana Wiley, wow, what a title and what perfect timing for you. It's great having you here today.
Thank you, Andy. I'm so glad to be here.
Absolutely.
Talking to you about my book. I'm still not seeing you on Zoom, though.
Well, I assure you, I am here. It's just the technical reality of what the system is that we have today. So I see you. I know it's not fair that you can see me, but
that's all right.
You are good. You are good. I see you. You look great. All right.
Thank you, Andy.
You have to compliment me because you don't even see me. Now, I like to ask guests, how and what life is like for them under the pandemic. I mean, what is something new that you have discovered for yourself, or maybe your book title says it all?
Well, there are various reactions and experiences with the pandemic. I happen to be very fortunate because I'm married to a man who is, even though we're both in our 70s, we maintain an active sex life. So I'm practicing what I preach, and I feel very fortunate to do that. And then we have couples that are depressed and stressed, and they've fallen out of the habit of being sensual or sexual. And so this book, in part, is meant to jumpstart this sexual relationship for couples.
Well, I'm all for that. I think that if they can if people can jumpstart their relationship, their romantic sexual relationship with our show, man, I'm all for that. Now, this might sound a little bit convoluted, but let me try this question out on you. But since the majority of our audience at Bloomer Boomer, majority-wise, we're over 55, and I realize, every person, every couple, they're all different, but how does your advice, let's say, differ for a 30 and 40-something maybe, compared to those of us older than that, like me? I won't ask you about the 20-somethings because, well, they're probably in kind of a world of their own, but that's not too crazy a question, is it?
Not at all. I mean, developmentally, we have different stages, and that includes our sexuality. And a long time ago, Gail Sheehy wrote, now I'm going to forget the title of her book, Passages. Good.
Yes, okay,
And she said that after 50, there's a crossover effect where women often become more assertive and say what they want and need, and men become more romantic and slow down and talk to their partners more about what they want and need. And sometimes that doesn't happen when a man is younger.
Wow,
She
that's
also,
really good advice. I don't think a lot of people really know that, but I think that it's such a true statement to make, and only somebody like you would be able to know that.
well, I'm a gerontologist in addition to being a sex therapist and a marriage and family therapist. And the way I became a gerontologist was that in the early 90s, when I lived in Palo Alto, I worked with a geriatrician and an internist, Walter Bortz. And he and I developed an aging test, and which I'd love to give if it's brief, but maybe not today. But the point is, we did studies with at the Palo Alto Senior Center, and followed up 6 months later. We gave them questionnaires, and then we talked to groups of SIRS, sons in retirement. So we got a lot of data, produced 2 studies that were later published in medical journals. So I've been fascinated with successful aging ever since for the last 30 years. And now I'm there, and I've been practicing successful aging, and I think I'm better for it. I exercise regularly, and I keep my mind active, and I've already admitted that I'm remaining sexual, and I feel that I'm necessary and useful.
You know, that's great in your profession, that you also live what you teach, and that's so important. You can't always do that. And I'm not going to add. Well, maybe I should. This sex test, is that what you're talking about?
No, it's an aging test.
An aging test.
So if you think about what our bodies do, the main things they do is our bodies move, our bodies think, and our bodies make love. We're actually procreate if you talk about it from a...
That's true too.
Yes. So you get a point a day. All of these are use it or lose it. You get a point a day for walking a mile. You don't get 2 points for walking 2 miles, but it's lots of equivalents for moving, swimming, and running. If you can still do it, it's probably better to walk, better on your joints. Lots of equivalents for exercise. Then you get a point a day for thinking and figuring out something on the computer, or something to do with Zoom or whatever.
Yeah.
Learning a new language, learning a musical instrument, doing crossword puzzles. There are lots of equivalents for...
Where does the sex come in here?
Okay, that's your third point.
Oh, okay.
And the equivalents for making love are a little harder to pinpoint, but it involves putting your sensual self in action. So hugging and touching. Of course, these days we can't do that unless we're quarantining with a loved one. But it's important to remain sensual, at least sensual. And there's a whole chapter in my book about being sensual, getting to know your partner better, and touching more, doing more outer course, which is everything but penetrative sex. There's dancing together. But going back to the aging test, you do get 2 more points for remaining engaged in life. And these days, we can't do that as much. I know as a grandmother, I'm frustrated that I can't see and hug my grandchildren. But we do have Zoom meetings, but it's not quite the same. But it's important to do volunteer as an older person. If you're retired, don't retire, redirect, and volunteer if you can, and just stay engaged in life.
So the volunteering lesson or advice is part of your gerontology background and information, I take it. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So, I would love to hear more about you. I know that you encourage couples to make the most of this extended period of what you call forced togetherness, which indeed that is what it is, to rekindle the sparks of passion and discovery and deeper levels of intimacy. It makes sense to me, but tell me a little more about how how you evolved into this licensed in marriage and family therapist work, and your as an author, and love in the time of Corona.
Well, I've been doing this work for almost 35 years, and it's deeply satisfying work because I have seen transformations in individuals and couples that I see, and these days I'm seeing clients over Zoom. But I'm so glad that I discovered this work. I didn't go to graduate school to get my master's until I was in my early 30s, and then later got my PhD. And actually, it was my husband Brian and I who came up with the idea of love in the time of Corona, the beginning of March, when it looked like this COVID-19 was going to become more serious. And of course, at the time we didn't think it'd go on this long. So a book seemed necessary to guide people for how to quarantine and make the most of it, and maybe emerge, because eventually it'll be over and we'll have a vaccine. But if you could look back one day on 2020 and say, this was the time when we got closer, when we started to touch again and get to know each other better. That's the first chapter of the book, get to know your partner better. And really listen. I think one of the best sex tips that I could give to your viewers, listeners, is really listen to each other. Really listen. And lots of couples get books on gardening and travel, when we used to be able to travel, and finance, and have discussions about it. But many couples have more trouble talking about sex. So there are lots of exercises in the book, Love in the Time of Corona, that will help couples launch some conversations about sexuality. For instance, in that first chapter, Get to Know Your Partner Better, there's a sex menu, and you can pick activities, whether you want to be giver, receiver, or you're not sure, and you can go and check the boxes, and then you can have a discussion about it. And this can help couples where they may not have talked much about their sexual relationship. And it may also help, we need dopamine, and dopamine is the hormone of arousal, and you need some novelty to get dopamine to come out of your brain and into your body. So we need some new things, and you need to spice up your relationship. And so there are lots of ideas for that, because we need more dopamine, which can transform your relationship and make it interesting again. Lots of older couples think if they've been together, they know everything there is to know about the other person, and that's just not true. There's always something to discover about the other person and make your relationship more vital.
And just a quick tip, how do you generate the dopamine as an example?
Well, with anything that's new, novelty.
I see. Okay, I got you.
So you might talk about maybe a new sexual position.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
And actually, going back, because I talked earlier about outer course, some of the most, I have to tell you a story. This has to do with massaging and touching, which is full body caressing, which is in chapter, it's chapter 4, I think, about touch. And so I have a friend. I've known him for years. He's 95. He lives in Los Angeles. And I sent him and his partner, they're both still sexually active, a book. And he was thrilled. He said, at 95, I always thought I had to have my genitals stimulated to get aroused. He said, I discovered through your book, Full Body Caressing, that how good it felt to have my body touched, and without even thinking about intercourse. And he said, I wished I'd had your book years ago. It would have saved so many years of frustration.
Yeah.
So this was a great testimonial, and this is a wonderful man, and good for him for still being sexually active at 95.
You know, I'm going to show the book here a little bit, but I know you have the book by you. Can you just hold it up on the screen? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here it is, Love in the Time of Corona.
All right.
And
Yeah.
and on
Nice,
and on the
nice cover on it. I like that a lot. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
You know, couples are, spending so much time, quarantine. What else are we going to do together these days? There's this, a little voice in the back of my head that keeps telling me, either they are people are having constant, non-stop lovemaking, or they can't. Unfortunately, they can't stand each other. I don't know. Maybe that's too extreme. But there's something maybe in between the two. So I think that your book may solve the second option, which is, get back into working on loving each other and love making, and even though being with the same person all the time, I might take a little extra work to do that.
Well, that's right. Generally speaking, when I do therapy, general therapy, I talk about you have a range between 1 and 10, all or nothing kind of thinking, and you should learn that you can operate very well in a 3 to 7 range. It's about making compromises and touching each other. And if the man has erectile dysfunction, we don't have to have intercourse to have satisfying sex. And some older couples have discovered that oral sex can be very satisfying. And of course, the biggest problem, even in the early 90s, that Dr. Bortz and I discovered at the Palo Alto Senior Center, and this is before 1998, when Viagra was approved. But the biggest problem that we found with older people is that for men, it was impotence, and for women, it was a lack of opportunity. There weren't enough older men to go around. And so there's an explosion of sex toy sales. Why is that? Because sex toys can be very satisfying, and the last 5-10 years, especially the last few years, the technology is amazing. And if you can either use a sex toy, like if a woman doesn't have a partner, she should bring herself to orgasm for her health, and it helps relieve stress. Wow. And a sex toy, a vibrator, can be great for that. I can get explicit with you, Andy. Can I?
Yes, you can. I won't blush, and besides that, you can't see me blush.
I can't see you at the moment. Yeah. But a dildo, for instance, well lubricated dildo inside the woman's vagina, where she can do a Kegel, contract on it, will help her PC muscles that line the vagina stay strong. And it will also help her not be incontinent. And that's a huge problem with older people, especially older women, is urinary incontinence. So there's so many things that can be benefit. If you have a real partner with real life intercourse, contracting on a real penis can also be good. And erections are good for erections. And having regular intercourse for an older woman helps her health, her vaginal health, and her overall health. So I'm a real cheerleader for remaining sexual, and
I can see one's doctor prescribing a dildo.
Oh yes, and I often I'm a PhD doctor, not an MD, but I often prescribe certain sex toys. In fact, this afternoon when I do my show, Love, Lust, and Laughter on Progressive Radio Network, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Lori Buckley, and she has a website where one of the things she does is to sell particular sex toys.
I see. Uh-huh.
And so I'm all for sex toys, and it's a very good idea for to bring them in. If you bring them into partner sex, the guy should learn how to use a sex toy really expertly.
Yeah.
And it can be a great add-on to a couple's sex life.
Yeah. Well, it shows you what a great topic this is, because we're on the verge of making this the longest show we've ever done. So, but that's no problem. I'm all for that. Tell me more. Tell me more about love in the time of Corona, and how it offers exercises, true to life stories, and tips to help couples find more pleasure together.
Well, let's talk about the health benefits a little more. I've alluded to them.
Uh-huh.
But let's talk a little bit more, because there have been a lot of studies, and sex with a partner releases oxytocin, and oxytocin helps us a lot. The more we're touched, the more we want to be touched. It's a positive feedback loop, and touch releases oxytocin. And it helps us feel more bonded to the person and more communicative with the person if we have oxytocin. Now, you don't have to have intercourse to get oxytocin relief. So, as I said, touching will help a lot. But we have a lot of stress these days, and with the pandemic. And so a person with too much stress is much more likely to develop high blood pressure, and it can also, too much stress can change the way our brains deal with anxiety, depression, and even addiction. So we've got to be very proactive about handling stress, being mindful, and there's a whole chapter on mindfulness in my book. Being in the moment helps with stress a lot, because if we're in the moment, we're not thinking about the future, which gives us anxiety, or the past, which can give us depression, but we're staying in the moment. And so mindfulness is important, and then the skin-to-skin contact. At the very least, lie naked with your partner. If you're lucky enough to have a partner, I'm sure there are many women listening here, because there are so many more older women than older men, because we've got to get our older men to take better care of themselves. They die earlier than,
Right.
earlier than women do. So older women outnumber older men by a whole bunch. So if you're lucky enough to have a partner, at the very least, lie naked and touch each other. And it doesn't have to be on the genitals, but holding hands. One study showed, this was so interesting to me, that when a woman was getting, she was in a functional MRI machine, so they're looking at her brain, and they gave her shocks, a stressor.
Mm-hmm.
And if her husband or her beloved partner was there holding her hands, her brain showed that she did not experience as much stress. Absolutely. So it helps so much. And learning to massage each other is really, really important. Yeah. And you don't have to take a lesson in massage, although they exist on YouTube. Everything exists on YouTube.
Sure does.
But massaging each other, taking turns, as I mentioned, full body caressing exercises in my book, also called sensate focus exercises. And sensate focus was a term that Masters and Johnson came up with, the famous sex researchers of the late 50s and 60s, because they discovered in their research that too many people were too genitally focused. Too focused on the genitals, and there are all these other possibilities from the top of our head down to the bottom of our toes that really can be erogenous zones and can be arousing. So taking turns massaging each other and talking about it and discovering discovering new erogenous zones. Whoop, we get more dopamine that way too. More dopamine. We need that.
It might seem when I was back as a teenager in my 20s, you thought, gosh, whoever needs a book about how to have sex, but some of those things don't come quite as quickly and naturally, and so your ideas in your book are really, really good. And so Bloomer Boomer speaks to people over 55, 55 plus, and I often wonder what your vantage point is, or from your vantage point, are the needs a lot different between, say, young adults and people over 55?
Well, the needs are different, but one of the ways that couples have a much better sex life is that they don't have children at home anymore.
Yeah, there you go. That's
the kids are launched.
To disturb you. Yeah.
The kids are launched, and so my book, Love in the Time of Corona, is really targeted a little more for, let's say, 40s and up, where maybe if you have little children around, it's going to be harder to do this. Like my second chapter is schedule your date night at home, cooking together, setting the scene, flowers on the table, making a nice takeout food, or maybe you've cooked an aphrodisiac meal together. There are lots of aphrodisiac recipes, and it could be the placebo effect that maybe makes it work or not. But being together, setting the scene in the bedroom, clean sheets on the bed, making sure you have nice lighting, pick up the clutter. So all of those things can be really delightful for your date night at home, but much harder to manage if you've got little kids.
For sure. So yeah. leave the grandkids with mom and dad.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is not a time to have the grandkids visiting.
Yeah.
Well, this is a time for you and your beloved to schedule time just for the two of you, and really focus in on each other and really, really listen. Really listen. And that was my first tip, best tip.
So Diana, as we close out, I know you talk about 7 secrets for sensational sex. That's a pretty long list, and it's always good for repeating. But I'd love to maybe if you can talk about that and in general, or maybe people just can get the book and find them.
No, let's talk about it. The 7 secrets for sensational sex are the last part of my book, and I've just opened my book to remind myself of the order that they go in. And the number 1 tip is to take care of yourself first. And this means taking responsibility for your own self and speaking up if something doesn't feel comfortable. And then your partner can trust that if something isn't quite right, you'll speak up. Silence doesn't work in good sex. And the second point is to respect boundaries. You want to be a safe, we talk about containers, when the two of you are engaged in sex. And if a partner has told you that a certain area is off limits, respect that area. The third tip is to communicate openly and directly. And certainly, that's another advantage to being older. Most of us are past playing games and being coy. We can talk directly about our needs. And remember, the passages crossover that Gail Sheehy talked about is that we're more comfortable talking about our needs. And an older woman is more in touch oftentimes with what she wants. Number 4 is don't take anything personally. It's hard. Like, I've talked to a lot of guys who have struggled with erectile dysfunction, and then they take a medication and Cialis or Viagra, and that can help. But if they've had too many years or even a year of their female partner rejecting them, not being interested, it's very hard to overcome that, and it often needs some professional help. Seeing a sex therapist. But don't take anything personally. Number 5 is focus on your partner's pleasure. I'm so lucky because my husband does that, and he has a saying, worship your woman and the goddess will reward you.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
So, my first name is Diana, so I get myself into Goddess Diana
Yeah.
the mode, and I feel like I'm such a lucky lady. The fifth point is to express gratitude. This is so important, whether you're being sexual or not. And expressing gratitude has been shown scientifically to be good for our health. And too many couples stop complimenting each other and say, and I have an exercise in expressing gratitude, the sweet nothings exercise in the book. And this is where the couple takes turns saying, I love and appreciate you for bringing me tea every morning in bed, for cooking a meal once a week, or, there are so many things. I love the way you really look me in the eyes. I love and appreciate. You go through, and then you take turns, and then at the end of that, you go over what you learned from each other. But too many couples, their relationship kind of withers from what I call emotional undernourishment. They've started to take each other for granted, and they've forgotten to tell each other what they really like and appreciate. So that's important, and express gratitude. And number 7, the last one, is let go. And it's hard to let go and have delicious orgasms if you don't feel safe. This is particularly true for women. You don't feel safe in the relationship, and you don't have a nice kind of beautiful environment in which to make love. I mean, beautiful in that you've set the scene.
Sure.
You've made it as nice as you can make it, and you put away your devices. Oh my goodness!
Yes, there you
go. So important.
Get them out of the bedroom, right?
That's right. At least.
Yeah. Diana, you're really a wealth of great information, and I'm 72, and it really makes sense to me, and I know it will to our group, our community here of Bloomer Boomers. So I just want to thank you so much. But first of all, before we close out, let's get another look at your book, and. We've got
So Love in the Time of Corona, and then on the back cover, the DearDrDiana.com website is there, and that is an advice blog, people with COVID-19 related problems, or even not. I mean, even with my book, it's like one of the blurbers said, it's a year's worth of sex therapy in one volume. So you don't have to have a pandemic going on to appreciate this, and even the advice given in Dear Dr. Diana. It also will take you to Amazon, where you can get the book either in print form, like this, or in ebook. I think print form is better, and a lot of older people prefer it anyway, because you can read a chapter and maybe underline it or highlight it, and then have your partner do the same, and then use that. It's called bibliotherapy, actually, but that as a platform for discussion. It can lead you into more discussion.
Yeah. My goodness. Okay, well, we have covered a lot of territory here, and very helpful, and I want to thank you so much.
You're welcome, Andy, and you can tell I like talking about things about sex, but about most things having to do with successful aging, with my gerontologist hat on.
Oh,
and
so you do a good job. You really do.
Thank you so much, Andy. And so you know how to reach me.
Yeah, I have that. Well, I have that on there. We ran the a picture of your website, and it scrolled through there, so everybody sees that, and they see where to get the book. And I think that just about everything we need, isn't it?
I think so, Andy. And I've really enjoyed talking to you. And
likewise.
And I hope that your audience has found it helpful.
Absolutely. Well, again, we want to thank Diana Wiley and her book, Love in the Time of Corona, Advice from a Sex Therapist for Couples in Quarantine. What perfect timing. And you can find out more on that and on this on Facebook, YouTube, and of course at bloomerboomer.com. And if you like this, please like us over on Facebook and follow us on your favorite social media. In the meantime, so long, and I will see you on the next show. Cheerio.
Great, Andy. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.